So let me talk to you a little bit about guns and gear. I've carried most of these handguns on this particular table, so let me talk to you a little bit about the guns first. Perfect example, this is the Smith & Wesson M&P 9C. This gun, along with the CAR, the XDM 3.8, the other full-size Smith & Wesson M&P, and the Glock all have one thing in common, and it's number one on my list when I'm selecting a firearm, and that's reliability. So when I look at a firearm, I look at it with a test I call the REAP test. REAP stands for reliability, ergonomics, accuracy, and power. So let's talk about reliability first. Perfect example. Matter of fact, I haven't shot this XDM quite as much yet, but all of these guns have had significant amount of rounds put through them. I would expect my handguns in training and not actively cleaning them every time I touch them to run thousands of rounds without any kind of malfunctions. If they don't, to be honest with you, I'm not going to carry them as a carry gun. This particular little M&P 9C is my standard carry gun about half of the time, and I have been shooting this gun and training it with it for multiple years and have yet to have a malfunction. I couldn't tell you the number of rounds through it, but I would guess it's somewhere up around 25,000 rounds, not a single malfunction. All of these guns run, and if you buy a gun from a good manufacturer, you know, a CAR, Glock, Springfield, Smith & Wesson, and you know, even a Sig Sauer, they're all good guns, but I see a lot of people show up to ranges with junk guns, and when they show up to them with junk guns, they get junk in return when they're training. And typically these handguns are handguns these folks have carried to defend themselves from a potential threat, and they fail on the range, so they're probably going to fail in real life. When I pick up a gun and set it up, I do a couple things, and there's some things that I don't do to a carry handgun. Number one, I don't do a trigger job to them. I'm okay with someone cleaning up a trigger on a carry gun, but I would not recommend that you lighten up or put a match type competition trigger in a carry gun. Most of these factory guns have really decent triggers that you should be able to manipulate just fine out of the box, unless you end up with a Glock with a real heavy New York trigger or something like that. But generally speaking, I want to leave the factory trigger on. I don't want to have to go to court and defend my decision to put a super light match type trigger to make it a more effective killing gun to some attorney in court. The second thing I look at on a handgun is oftentimes what I'm going to do when I have a carry handgun is I want to increase the friction on the grip itself. And if you look at this gun, as well as this XDM 3.8, I've got skateboard tape on actually one side of the gun, on one gun on both sides in the other one. What skateboard tape or stippling, as you see on this gun, does for me is it increases the friction between my hand and the gun. And the second you pick up one of these firearms that has this tape or stippling like this on the gun, you'll feel an immediate difference in notice and recoil control. I am kind of cautious. For example, on this 3.8, I don't have skateboard tape on this side of the gun because the skateboard tape was tearing my inner shirt up. So, you know, you may have to modify it, but the point is I've got it on the front strap and I've got it on the side of the gun where my strong hand sits on the weapon itself. Another thing you're going to see on these firearms, let's look at the 9C for example, is all of my carry guns have a real heavy-duty rear sight made by Dawson. This is called a Dawson Charger rear sight. And it's big, thick, blocky. It's actually got a reverse angle cut on the front of it and some serrations. And this sight is designed for one-handed manipulation of the firearm. This particular CAR that I'm carrying, for example, if you look at that sight, it's kind of got a back-angled ramped rear sight, and I can manipulate this gun just fine with one hand, but it's much more difficult. So I'll eventually replace this with a solid, beefier rear sight that I can use for one-hand manipulation. I don't typically have night sights on all my firearms like you see on this Glock 17 of mine. And the reason is I don't think that night sights are necessarily that important, and you're probably wondering why. Well, the bottom line is, in order to see the night sights glowing, it has to be to a level of darkness where I'm going to have to use a flashlight to illuminate and identify the threat anyways. So if I have a gun or a carry gun that does not have night sights, that's the reason why. It's not a bad thing, but certainly not on top of my list. This particular gun is unique in that this system actually is a red dot system. This is a Trijicon RMR put together for me by David Bowie of Bowie Tactical. And I really think that sighting systems like this are how things are going to be set up in the very near future. These sights are becoming so lightweight and heavy duty that you can mount them to a handgun and expect them to last pretty much forever. And now I have the ability, instead of having to focus back on the front sight, simply to look downrange at that threat which is probably what my vision is going to want to do anyways under stress, and look for the red dot. So for those of you that may be a little bit older or maybe have failing vision and we can't focus on that front sight, that's another consideration, to use some sort of optical device on your home defense gun if you can. This particular gun has a Crimson Trace laser on it, and I haven't carried a lot of guns with lasers, but I found that that laser that I can activate with my middle finger allows me to train and be in strange positions where normally I would not know for sure where the round's going to go as I'm practicing. Well, with a laser on it, I can be in an altered, weird, prone position or something, you know, in a fight where I can't look through the sights and see where the gun's pointed, but as soon as I activate the laser, I know exactly where it's pointed. This is also a great feature for those of you that have, once again, a hard time focusing on that front sight. I simply activate the laser, put it on the center of their chest, and then you know exactly where your rounds are going to be hitting. So I strongly recommend Crimson Trace laser like this. This is actually the Crimson Trace Light Guard. It's not mounted to a firearm right now, but the unique thing about this new product is I have these on my home defense firearms. They're very small, lightweight flashlights, and they're small enough where I'm probably going to have some holsters very soon where I can actually put these on all of my carry guns, because they're not going to add any additional weight to the gun, and that way I have a full-time weapon-mounted light on the firearm that I carry. So I think that's also going to be a neat new thing that you're going to see in the very near future. Strongly recommend you look into those two products, and they don't pay me to say that, believe it or not. The last consideration for the firearm obviously is going to be ergonomics, accuracy, and power. These are all 9mm handguns. I think the modern day, you know, bonded type ammunition in a plus piece setting, for example, this Remington 9mm is going to be just fine as a stopper in a fight. I don't think you necessarily have to shoot a 40 or a 45 to stop someone, especially if you're training a lot and you're training for good shot placement. And shot placement is the key when you're talking about stopping somebody with a handgun round. So you're going to want to make sure that you consider and pick good ammunition. Ergonomics in my REAP test simply means when I pick up the gun, I want to be able to manipulate the controls on it. If I can reach the mag release or the slide release, I just want to be able to manipulate it, and it needs to feel good in my hand. And doing some shooting drills or some shooting tests is the only way you're going to find out if that gun is set up and has good ergonomics. Accuracy, hey, the bottom line is gunfighting range with a handgun is probably going to be between 5 and 7 yards at the very, very most. But I want to know that I can get 15 yards away if I had to take a shot to save a family member and get good hits. So I'm looking for a relatively accurate defensive handgun. Doesn't need to shoot an inch at 25 yards, but I'd like to have something that'll put something downrange at the 3-inch or so group at 25 yards. Moving over from the guns, gear selection is a key consideration. I see a lot of people show up to ranges and do a lot of my training classes with holsters that are like this. And this is a Safariland holster. This is a 5.68. This is a wonderful holster. It's a great range holster, and in certain cases might be a great carry holster. But when you start to think about what's going to happen in the engagement or the situation, you're probably going to end up in a fight, and you may very well end up running or jumping over things or rolling around the ground, or God forbid, with someone that has their hand on your firearm. And a holster such as this simply is not going to retain the firearm. It's just not going to hold it in there. So at a minimum, if you're going to carry an outside the waistband holster, I recommend something like this Bianchi that has a thumb snap, or something that has some sort of retention device. Also, while this ALS holster is probably the best retention holster that I found out there, I literally love this holster. It's got a thumb button retention activation up here that's very, very effective in keeping the gun in the holster. I'll show you how it works real quick. Basically, as the gun goes in the holster, it locks up on the ejection port solidly, so the only way for me to get the gun out is to activate that button and pull the gun out of the holster. The downside though right now in this particular model, and this is one of my range holsters that it's designed for easy on, easy off, is this is the best paddle out there, but this paddle will still fail in a full contact fight. So I do recommend, and they actually sell it with a belt loop attachment, that you utilize that belt loop attachment if you're going to carry an outside the waistband holster versus wear a paddle, because once again they will fail under the stresses of a fight. I'm carrying right now a model Safariland Model 18 with this XDM, and this is my preferred inside the waistband holster of choice. And I prefer, as a concealed carry holder and inside the waistband, it's going to give me much better concealment. It's going to give me better retention because now I have the compression of my pants and the belt and the gun inside my pants. It's going to be very difficult unless someone pulls it straight up and out of the holster to get the gun out. And these are form fitted to guns, so they actually have a little bit of built-in retention in the holster themselves. So once again, that's what I would recommend, is a good inside the waistband holster such as this. There are some other good ones out there on the market. I like this one. It's a good laminate type holster. Some of you may consider carrying just a stiff leather holster that goes on your belt. Once again, this is a great holster, but I don't recommend this particular one because it doesn't have a thumb snap. And if you're going to wear any outside the waistband or outside the belt holster, I recommend you have a tension or some sort of retention device on it. If you're going to carry it in your pocket, please carry with a holster inside your pocket. I don't have a problem sticking a revolver in my pocket, but an automatic where, who knows, maybe that trigger is going to catch on something in my pocket. That to me is just too high a risk. So I recommend carrying with actually a pocket holster. And if you do, make sure you get one that is set up so when you have it in the corner of your pocket, when you reach down and grab your handgun and pull it out of your pocket, the holster stays there and doesn't come out with the handgun. Last but not least, be wary and ready for the fact that you may have to strip the holster as it comes out of your pocket if you fail on that. Belly bands and some of the other carry methods out there, they're comfortable, they're very concealable, they're very deep concealable, but to be honest with you, they don't typically offer the retention you're going to need in most situations. So it just really depends on the threat level of the area you're going to be in. Always prepare for the worst. Lastly, about gear, I do think that the belt or support system that you carry on is probably the most important part of the kit. This particular belt, if you look at the thickness of it, is very thick, strong leather. It's made by a company and it's designed to be utilized to carry handguns. That's what this belt is made for. Same thing with this old Bianchi belt. This thing is made to have a handgun on it. It's got probably some inserts inside of it. It's very thick leather. It's very high quality, and it will hold up when someone grabs my gun and my holster is doing my job. I need my belt system to do its job and make sure that it doesn't break too. And a lot of people show up with cheap belts. As far as a mag pouch, I carry a simple single leather mag pouch. This one is a nice little Safariland pouch. It sits flat next to my body. It's very comfortable, very concealable, and it actually offers good retention. And you want to make sure that your mag pouch offers a little bit of retention, because the last thing you want to do is roll around fighting some person, then have to do a reload, and next thing you know, you don't have a magazine. So in summary, the bottom line is, you're spending lots of money on guns and ammunition and training and time on the range and whatever else. Pay attention to your gear, because this is the stuff that will save your life or let you down if you don't buy quality gear. Get rid of that cheap stuff, get rid of the cheap guns, invest in good quality equipment, and it'll pay you back in the end.